physicality is only an extension of our mind, so once you've been there and been through it, it's not as big a shock as some might think. I grew up watching the Fab Four, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard and Duran. Now, they were men. They went down to the wire. And fighters like that don't exist anymore. Look at Ryan Garcia at the weekend. Now, I'm a Garcia fan.
Yeah, me.
He quit. Mm-hmm. No two ways about it. You've got someone there who's got the whole world watching. He's been paid tens and millions of pounds. And what happened? He got the wind knocked out of him and he quit. That was a man, that was a real man. And can you imagine trying to pull some 17-year-old snowflake off the street nowadays, give him 6 weeks basic training, put a rifle in his hand and send him to protect this country? Can you really imagine the state of
we
how
bring
that
that
would
up a
end?
fair bit, don't we? Yeah.
No
It's
chance.
not going to work, is it?
It's never happened, mate.
Boys, this podcast is a banger. We've got Danny Christie on the podcast today. We had Holmes on this week where he gave us his side of the story on how he thought the fight went. It was only fair that we got Danny Christie on to give us his version of events. We dive a lot more into Danny Christie's past, get some more stories out of him. And we also talk a little bit about what he's got in store in future. This podcast is sponsored by the Maddox pub in Pontefract in Ropergate. The bar is open from 9:30 in the morning till late, where it serves coffee on the morning. There's quizzes with Carl Styles on a Wednesday in the summer. Place is dog friendly. There's live music in the garden in summer and on most Sundays inside. The bar is an absolute all-rounder for anybody that's from this area in Five Towns or wants to travel in. Make sure you go to the Maddox pub in Ropergate, and also make sure you hit the subscribe button. Try and turn that notification bell on and make sure you enjoy the podcast.
Yes, boys.
Thank you very much travelling over again, mate.
Not a problem, mate.
First of all, massive congratulations for your win on Saturday.
Thank you.
How did it feel getting your hand raised?
Up there, mate. As I said before, it's quite hard to verbalise. All them words that we think describe good feelings: joy, ecstasy, happiness, elated. None of them come close,
Mm-hmm. How does that compare to your Brazier fight and stuff?
The same, that same feeling you get. I mean, it probably magnified a little bit because of the scale of the fight, and the undefeated Anthony Holmes I was in against with, but just had total belief in myself. 100% total belief, and that belief never wavered. Me and Anthony spoke a little bit in messages around Christmas time, and I've always liked him. I've always thought he was a good lad, but I'm not going to disclose too much of a private conversation. But when the fight got made, he sent me a message saying, he didn't think I'd earned a shot at him, and that was between 8 and 9 o'clock at night. And first of all, I thought, well, that's for the promotion to decide. Secondly, I got out of bed and went down to the gym and done 10 rounds. And from that day forward, I thought, I am going to give it to you good style, mate.
What was the meaning behind going to the gym to do the rounds? Was it to
Just
prove to yourself? Yeah,
it lit a fire under me
ass
there and then, and as if I wasn't taking him serious enough, I just had that bit between my teeth and, wholeheartedly believed I was going to chin him.
Mm-hmm. I saw you put a video on and you said you walked into that ring feeling that no man would be able to beat you. Having that confidence, how much does that affect you walking in, knowing that to yourself that you're going to be a hard person to beat on the night?
It's just belief, it's what it comes down to, belief. I pray and I write things down, and it takes a little while before you get this self-belief, it's you start by writing things down. You don't just all of a sudden believe in yourself overnight. It's a process. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe it, pretend you believe it. Fake it till you make it. Act like you believe it. Write it down. I will. I will. And I will. And I will. I will. Before long, you start getting faith in the process. Things start manifesting. Things start happening for a reason. Because they're supposed to. And we said a very long prayer in the changing room after my warm-up. We asked for guidance, we asked for protection, and we asked for strength. And I felt them, I felt them. As if I wasn't feeling strong enough. I walked out of that changing room on the way. They told me the music wasn't working. Was I okay with that? I says, well, not really. And Hannah sort of looked at us, what? Like, are you not going to fight? I said, give over, mate. I said, let's go. And it was very intense walking to that ring. You know, it was, as I just said briefly there before, it was a cold feeling, ice cold. You know, I was filled with confidence, and I was ready to go. Couldn't wait to get my hands on him. Took a while, but we got there.
That fourth round, then obviously you'd gone into your corner on the third round. You had a big gash over your eye. Doctors were obviously looking at it. You come out a different fighter in the fourth. You obviously were still on front foot all the way through the fight, pretty much. But were you telling yourself there, I've got to do it in this round just in case, or were you still trying to pace yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my coach had a word with us, who I love to bits, and a massive shout out to my coach Wayne Mason. You know, I've known him 25 plus years, and I look up to him. You know, he's like a big brother that I never had. It's hard to verbalise the respect I've got for him and the admiration I've got for him. And he tells me how it is. You know, he doesn't sugarcoat nothing. And he said he's tiring. And I felt him slowing down in that third anyway. He said he's tiring. He said, stop thinking about what he might or might not throw at you. He said, get in his face and knock him out. He's there to be taken. And I went out, you know, like a different animal, intensified what I was already doing in the gym. We don't go forward like that usually when I'm fighting. But we looked at Anthony and we knew that was how you beat him. He's not the same fighter when you put pressure on him. And that's what it was, relentless pressure. And it only increased, you know, as the rounds went on, the pressure went up. And, you know, that first right hand I hit him with on the button was a peach. I hit him with the middle knuckle right on the chin, and his chin ended up down here. It was like a forearm follow through. And I was toying with the notion he maybe wasn't going to get up the way he hit the floor. But he's a tough man. He made his way back to his feet. But while the referee was counting, he was supporting himself on the ropes, which I wasn't going to complain about, but you know, you have to be shown to the referee that you can stand on your own 2 feet. Yeah. Well, it didn't look like he was doing that. And then when the referee called time, he sort of bent over and put his hands on his knees. He was 2 or 3 punches away from being finished, you know, and after that, right hand, left hand landed, you know, that was all she wrote.
It were a crazy moment because we could see that you were pouring the blood out your eyes leading up to that punch.
Yeah.
With 4 or 5 seconds leading up to it, and then it was just it looked like the punch only came from this side. He didn't pull it back whatsoever. It was just a short step in and through it.
Yeah.
Obviously did a lot of damage then.
Yeah, the vision was a problem. And he did flash me proper in that second round with that uppercut. And I think he might have clipped it once or twice. I think I might have got a knuckle in the eyeball itself because my lens still feels a bit scratched and it was never the same. And then the other cut, what got opened up, one of them was a clash of heads. I'm not sure which one it was, but you know, there was no complaints either. That's show business. And blood was going into both eyes by this time, so to get the vision that I needed, I had to keep constantly wiping my eyes. And doing that, you know, you get them intermittent lapses in focus. You know, you're not quite on the ball when you're wiping your eyes. But yeah, it played out how it played out, didn't it?
You know, when you watch it back the first time,
yeah,
does it feel like it's you? Is it the same person? Do you see more of what you didn't see in the fight? Sort of try and break that down for me. Is it the same person?
Yeah, I'm fully aware it's me. You don't remember every move. That's the beauty of watching it back. Not just because you're watching yourself, but I was buzzing and couldn't wait to watch the fight back long before it happened. I wanted to watch it back as a bare knuckle fan, you know, and watch how these two gladiators collided. You know, I wanted to see how it went down because you don't remember everything in there. It's a funny thing in there. Sometimes all time stops, you know, and you've got time to think. You can think, you can break things down, you can analyse. It's like time slows down. Other times, your time speeds up. You know, so it's good to watch it back in real time. And yeah, I was buzzing with it. Watching it back the second and third time, trying to watch it from a non-biased position, I did give myself the third round. You know, it was close, but I gave myself that third round and he started to slow down. But I give him the first 2 rounds, hands down to his movement, and you know, it's frustrating is what he is, and that's credit to himself and his skill set. But the key was in training not to get frustrated. We knew it wasn't going to be the fight that I wanted straight away, and we were going to have to chase him round. But it played out almost how we had it planned. You see, on the run-up to a fight, on the run-up to that fight, the visualisation that you go through, you know, for me, it's not just winning. You don't just visualise knocking somebody all over. You visualise yourself getting cut. You visualise yourself getting beat. You visualise yourself being badly hurt. You visualise yourself pulling yourself off the canvas after a heavy knockdown. All these things are important, and you don't just think about them, you live them. You live them in your head. That's how I visualise. I live them there and then. So that way when it happens in the ring, you've already been there. You're mentally prepared, and you don't fall to pieces when you start bleeding or when you get hurt, because you've already lived that moment. It's just a case of taking your body through it with you when it happens. And our physicality is only an extension of our mind, you know. So once you've been there and been through it, it's not as big a shock as some might think, you know.
I've never thought about it that way. Anytime I've visualised fights, I've always visualised myself not getting it, throwing big shots, obviously getting a victory. I've never actually visualised myself getting dragged down into the depths.
Then what happens when you do get badly dropped?
Exactly,
You might fall to pieces because you haven't been there before.
You've already dealt with worst possible case scenario there, haven't you? In your
makes
head
sense.
a million times. Bring me back to the training camp. We mentioned off camera. You don't have to go into full detail. You mentioned there that you exchanged messages with Anthony. That motivated you to go do the rounds that night. How did camp look? I know you mentioned in the post fight you were 100%. Did camp go to plan? Did you come in injury free? Everything sweet?
I'm never injury free. You know, they're not the type of injuries that were caused in camp. Fortunately, the injuries that I live with. You know, I got stabbed 3 times, and I've been shot in the back. You know, and the niggles that never go away. You know, both my shoulders are shot to pieces. You know, I did do a rotator cuff in that fight. But on the run up to the fight, you know, I'm never injury free. I have to do certain exercises, not on a morning, to get the synovial fluid in all the joints and get myself free and loose, you know, because a high mileage body, this, mate, you know, it's been through a lot.
What's next? What is the big play next for Danny Christie? Do you want to go to the States? I don't know if that's going to be allowed with your past. Is there another fight lined up, or
Time will tell.
time will tell?
Time will tell. You know, I'm not thinking about it right now. You know, I mentioned it briefly last night to a friend of mine, Ross. You know, I don't care. I don't give 2 fucks about going to America. If it happens, great. It's a new challenge, and I will summon the necessary motivation to fight whoever they put in front of us. But right now, I don't care.
How long do you digest on this? Just let the
Well, I'm going away in 2.5 weeks.
nice.
Some sun, sea, and sand. And, you know, I might have come to a conclusion by then. But there'll be no announcement until I've come back off holiday, you know, and I've fully rested up.
The power's kind of in your hands now. You've just got a big win. Is it the end of your contract with BKFC as well? So you've got options. So
I've got another multi-fight contract at home, which I haven't signed yet.
yeah, is that with BKFC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to chew things over, see where we go. You know, I could walk away right now, you know, and be happy. I'm past my best. You know, there's no 2 ways about it. I'm physically past my best. My mind's never been stronger, but you know, it told a bit in that fight. You know, especially in the first couple of rounds. Determination and belief never went away, but you see things. You see a punch. You know, and Anthony is fast, but you see something. Your brain's already told you to do it. Well, there's a delay now, you know.
Second guessing.
It's not as fast as it used to be. You know, there's a delay, and it's father time. It's what it is. It comes to us all. You know, I'm 38 years old.
Yeah.
I've been fighting a long time, and there's a definite notice in delay, a cognitive delay. You know, it's a motor functions. They're not where they once were, and it's just natural. It happens. It's father time, you know. I'm getting old.
It's easy for people to say into it and probably put ideas in your head, but ultimately you're the man that's got to go in there and do it. It's for fans to say this, that, and the other. You're the person that's putting yourself through this. I've been around sport a big part of my life, but to be around these bare knuckle boxes is a completely different breed. It's a completely different just process you've got to put yourself through. Just it's intense.
It certainly is. I mean, I don't really want to or like to compare myself to other people, but no names in particular, but you know, there's some people, you see some fights and you just think, you know, they shouldn't even be in there. The going gets tough, they get the wind knocked out of them, or they get the nose broke, or whatever it is, you know, and they don't want to know. You know, if you're not willing to go down to the wire, I mean, none of us want to die, you know, but if you're not willing to die in there, if you're not willing to go right down to the final straw, in my opinion, you've got no place in there. You know, this isn't a tickling contest.
I'm trying to wrap my head around someone who's got that mindset there. Where does that come from? Has it been in you since you've been a kid? Is it like you've got something to prove? Where does that faith and that drive to come from just to do that?
It's a good one, you know. I think you've either got it or you haven't. You know, it's not something that can be taught or trained in a gym. That stuff's unteachable. You know, I think I've just always had. That tenacity, I suppose. And I'm kind of old-fashioned for my age. You know, I romanticise and I live in years gone by. You know what I mean? I'll miss old times. I miss growing up as a kid with no mobile phones. All this disposable society that we've got now. Nothing's got value anymore. You know what I mean? Men haven't got the value that they once had. People are weak. People are soft. You know, all these snowflakes and liberals and woke people, they're everywhere. It's pathetic. You know what I mean? Men aren't men anymore. You know what I mean? I like to pride myself on being a man. You know what I mean? I like to pride myself on, you know, how things once were, you know, because real men are few and far between in this world, you know, and men like everything like they once were. You know, men like my granddad, men like that, you know, people who had nothing, you know. Look at this country, you know, before my time, post-war. Look how the whole country banded together. Look how nobody had nothing. You're growing vegetables in your garden, you know, and everything had value. You bought a shirt or a garment or a blouse for your woman. That was for life, you know. You bought something, it was for life. You know, it got worn and threadbare, you turned the collar inside out. You know, nothing was disposable. Everything had a value and a meaning. And them type of men, you know, you know, it's sad because they're almost extinct and they'll never, ever be born again. Not in this world. No. You know, and you only got to look at fighters were the same. I grew up watching the Fab Four, you know, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard and Duran. Now, they were men. They went down to the wire. And fighters like that don't exist anymore. You know, look at Ryan Garcia at the weekend. Now, I'm a Garcia fan.
Yeah, me.
He quit. No two ways about it. You've got someone there who's got the whole world watching. He's been paid tens and millions of pounds. And what happened? He got the wind knocked out of him and he quit. That boy quit. You know, now, I'm not calling him at all. I'm saying what I've seen. It's like, it's the problem with this world. Everyone's weak, everyone's soft. I watched a video the other day by Joe Allen's dad. Joe Allen's a lad that I follow on YouTube. He's a 14-year-old heavyweight, and he's got real potential. They're American. They live in Colombia. They follow me, and, you know, we exchange words now and then. You know, and his dad hit the nail on the head, you know, about this soft world that we live in and how things are now, and it reminded me of a lot of things, you know. I really identified with what he said. You see, when I was growing up, we all used to fight in the street. We were pretty rough where we were, and all us kids used to fight in the street. You know, and over years, you learnt your place, you know. You've got your lips bust a couple of times, and you knew your place on that street, you know. Yeah. Became evident where your place was. You don't get that now. No. You don't get this hierarchy with kids. Nobody knows the place anymore. That's why you've got that many people crossing the line on social media, because they don't know the line, because they've never been told. No one's ever broke the nose. You know, when I grew up, you crossed the line, you got a smack. And you knew where you belonged. You knew not to cross the line. That's the problem with social media. You've got hordes and legions of people all coming online that don't know when they've gone too far. They don't know, for one, the potential damage that they might be causing to somebody by giving someone abuse from behind a keyboard. You know, you can damage people. But the people that are doing that have never had a smack in the mouth. They don't know the place. That's why you've got kids running into schools, shooting schools up, because they've never been told the place, and the world's just gone fucking mental. You know what I mean?
It's a tough question to answer, but as a society, how do we move leaning more into teaching these young men that can it come back? Has the internet ruined it too much?
I don't know, you know, I'm not sure. One thing I'm certain of is combat sports should be almost mandatory for kids. You know, you might not have to compete, but I think everybody should know something or be taught at least basics in combat sports, you know, especially in the world we live in. You know, I think combat sports should be almost mandatory, you know, and if you don't want to continue and you don't want to compete, fair enough. But you've had a year of it, that'll do you.
You mentioned there a bit of a selfish question. You mentioned your grandfather.
Yeah.
Were you a mentor growing up? I was brought up by me granddad. My dad died when I was 10, 11. So he was like a figure that I really looked up to, and he was like a working class man, looked after my grandma, all this sort of stuff that I sort of like looked up to, tried to teach me life lessons and all stuff like this.
Yes,
was he a man that...
Yeah. I've never ever come across another man like him. Choking me up, mate. Yeah, I miss him. I miss him every day. He was a real man, you know. Shipped off to Korea when he was 17-year-old in the Korean War, you know, and he lost a lot of friends over there, and he was part of a massive offensive. Him and his regiment, the Inniskilling Dragoon Guards, were part of the biggest offensive in that war, and they fought the North Koreans and the Chinese all the way back over the Imjin River to Pyongyang, and fired his rifle many times in combat. And that was a man, you know, that was a real man. And can you imagine trying to pull some 17-year-old snowflake off the street nowadays, give him 6 weeks basic training, put a rifle in his hand and send him to protect this country? Can you really imagine the state of
We
how
bring
that
that
would
up a
end?
fair bit, don't we? Yeah.
No
It's
chance.
not going to work, is it?
It's never happened, mate. And that's what I'm talking about. These people will never come back. And it's sad. This is where this world's going. This country's going straight to hell.
It's this country, innit, really? If you look at Russians, how they deal with stuff.
Mate, it's a sad truth, you know. It's hard to... Not a lot of people give it credit. Not a lot of people think about these things. But, you know, it breaks my heart to know people like my granddad had such a massive influence in me and my life, and taught us everything. Taught us which way to style my hair. You know, taught us how to shine my shoes, how to, you know, tie my tie. These people were presentable no matter what. He lived and died in a shirt and trousers. You know, you never caught him in a T-shirt. You never caught him without his hair done. His shoes were all... You could see yourself in them, you know, because everything had a value, even himself. People don't care about themselves nowadays, so what chance have they got of caring for the fellow man, you know?
There's certain things I regret, like me... I'm probably a little bit too young or a little bit broken as a kid. That even some of these life lessons looking back that my granny used to give me. He used to always tell me like how you do anything is how you do everything, like even washing the plates and all stuff like this. And he used to you should just forget about it sometimes, but I'll never get that time back now to like, he was trying to nurture me, mentor me, and there's a little bit of regret there sometimes now. He's still alive, he's granny, but he's an old man, but you look back and you're like, people haven't got this North Star anymore. I think you're correct that.
It's true.
If you don't have the right men guiding you, then you will struggle, and I think this breeds a lot of entitlement, and then all this trouble you're seeing now, it's just, I just don't see how it recalibrates and renavigates back to where it was.
I don't think it ever will, personally.
No, me neither. You know, and it's sad and it's frustrating at times, you know, when I've had a taste of that. You know, I'd love to have been born in them times when my granddad was born. You know what I mean? When men were men, and when things had value and substance, you know, and your morals and your word was everything. You know, now people don't give a toss about anything, you know, and they'll trample on the next man just to get what they want. Things are different, man. Men and people in society have changed so much. It's scary. You know, my kids today, man, my kids don't know they're born. You know, the money that I throw at them kids, and it's a double-edged sword. giving your kids everything that you never had. You know, you're building, you're adding to it. You're adding to the problem I'm talking about. You're making weak kids because they don't know what it's like to struggle. They put their hand out and you put a purple one in the hand and that's it. You know what I mean? They don't know what it's like. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, doing that in that, I realise I'm part of the problem, but I'm trying to rein it back a little bit, you know. It's, like I say, it's a double-edged sword, giving your kids everything that you never had.
I think kids see it now as, if you don't give them it, you're a bastard. If you do give them it, that's sound or good.
It's the sense of entitlement is what it is. You know, like I've said, once upon a time, you had to work for everything. You know, nobody ever lent you any money. You know, people moved into a house and they went into that house bare, and bit by bit over decades, the house came into fruition. You saved and saved and saved and bought a carpet, and you've done the same for a wardrobe and a telly and a wireless and everything else that went with it. People get now, they want everything before they've even moved in. You know what I mean? It's this disposable entitlement that everyone thinks that they've got. It is what it is.
You just said it then earlier. I'm just rerouting back to what you were just saying about sort of a hierarchy growing up when you were a kid on the streets fighting and stuff, and it was similar to, I don't know what it was like with you growing up, but it was very similar to that with me. Like, we knocked about in a park and you sort of built your way up and had a little bit, probably not as much fighting going on in my town as there was in Carlisle. Right. But obviously now you're 38, you worked your way up pretty much at the top of the bare knuckle scene. As a young kid then, was you always quite high up in the hierarchy from fighting and stuff, or did it sort of grow as you got older?
I've got plenty of hidings when I was little, you know, if that's what you mean. Yeah. I was one of those, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I'd check my hiding, you know, and I wait till we're 10 feet away and I'd start again with my mouth. But it always caught back up with us. Yeah. You know, it always caught back up with us, and, you know, I was made to be sorry a few times, you know, for what I'd said and the way I'd gone on. But I got in a lot of scrapes and that, you know, and just became part of it, you know, in a pub or club or in a house or a kitchen or wherever, you know, you had a disagreement with someone, you went in the garden and you knocked 7 shades of shit out of each other and the best man won, and that was it. But I've been chinned a few times. It's part of it, you know, you can't win them all, but you can fight them all.
I felt something in the interview when you mentioned your kids. I can't remember which interview it was. You were discussing your kids at the end of the interview. I could feel the emotion there. Was that important for you there?
Yeah, of course it was. You know, my kids are everything to us. And I started out doing this bare knuckle to prove that I had something to offer. You know, I thought, before my body's completely failing us and before the window of opportunity had closed, I thought, I'll jump on this, you know, and my intention was to get the best available opponents. Because I didn't have time to mess about, you know, and fighting lesser opponents. He always wanted the best available opponents. And my second fight, we had a stand-in Darren Godfrey, you know, and I tipped my hat to him. He's a great lad, you know, but he knows what he is. You know, he was a last-minute stand-in, you know, but we need these people in bare knuckle to save the show sometimes. You know, I was up against a really good opponent who had 150 gloved fights and won about 142. You know what I mean? So it was good, but it never happened, and we got what we got. But after that fight, you know, I needed to make a statement for myself. And, you know, beating Anthony Holmes in the way that I did, you know, if I may say so myself, I think it's possibly the biggest statement in UK bare knuckle that's been made since the BKFC come to these shores. You know, and I'm very proud and privileged to have been at the forefront of that. And, you know, along the way, I started thinking about legacy, you know, and I started thinking about what I wanted to leave behind in bare knuckle. And I think I would be happy with what I've done in 3 fights. More so, you know, my kids will be able to look at this in years to come and they'll be able to say, that was my dad, you know, and my grandkids the same.
Yeah.
You know, that is Grandad Danny. You know, and that means something to me. You know what I mean? That you can't put a price on that type of stuff. You know, and whenever the day comes and I'm in the ground, you know, I like to think there'll be something there that people can look at and say, some boy, that Danny.
Do you feel that this journey you've been on to where you are now, when you mentioned there Grandad Danny, I'm surmising that your granddad had a huge influence there.
Yeah.
And do you want to almost replicate that where people can look back and say, he was my granddad.
I do. It was
It's powerful,
the family hero, is what he was. Everybody looks up to him. All my kids remember him for what he was. He was a marvellous man, Like I say, the sadness is, and I'm sure everybody had granddads like that. It's special because he was my granddad and I know what he was, but that whole generation, like I said, the sad thing is they're gone now, the values, and moreover, the level of commitment. You got married back then, it was for life. She wasn't doing your head in for 2 weeks and you bombed her off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you were committed.
Word was bond then, wasn't it?
For life. You know what I mean? My granddad met my nana when he was 19. It was his first ever girlfriend and he married her. And he was with her for 47 years before she died. One woman his entire life. And everything that goes with them people that lived before us, it's gone. It's all gone.
I think social media plays a massive part in that with, like you just said then, your granddad was married for, did you say 47 years?
Yeah.
Like now you see marriages fall apart constantly and a lot of people say it's down to social media and people being
I don't think we should
disposable.
have access 24/7 to people. Like, you would have gone to work, you'd have worked your shift, you come home, you spend time with your wife, you have dinner, you look after the kids, and now you're just inundated with access 24/7, and that has to have an effect on kids, which is the scary part. But even someone like me, it's like, I look forward to, I don't speak to my missus during the day, I look forward that when my day's over I get to go back and spend some time with her. And
yeah, that's how we should
I
be.
try and learn from little bits like that. I can get lost in it for the business that I do, but I think you're absolutely bang on that the morals there that people can. I'm just like trying to be sentimental now, looking back to my granddad. It's like I did learn a lot, but I could have learned probably a lot more listening to him than at that age. I was just a bit, let me just figure my own stuff out.
A lot of this stuff that you were taught at a young age doesn't come. You don't realise it till you're older. How many times has it happened to you? Someone's taught you something when you were a boy, and 25, 30 years later, you were like, it just drops. One day the penny just drops, and you're like, he was right. All that time ago, he was right. But at the time, you were blind to it.
Yeah.
The time you were a kid, you were narrow-minded. Whatever it was, you didn't see it. You didn't realise it.
Yeah.
My granddad taught us one thing, and that's everything happens for a reason. And I've only started believing that in the last year. I used to say to him, well, how? I remember once saying to him, well, what if you're at a crossroads and you go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and you randomly decide which way you're going to go? Or what about if you get an option and you flip a coin? That's chance. And his answer was, well, how do you know whichever way you chose wasn't the way you were supposed to go anyway? And I'm a big believer in that now. What will be, will be. Time will tell, all that stuff. And all the stuff that we go through, all the pain and adversity and, hell sometimes. Hell's a place on earth and it's up here, and anybody can be there. And all that stuff, in my opinion, is designed and put there with a purpose to make you and turn you into the person that you were ultimately supposed to be. So you can't quit. If you quit and you throw the towel in, you're never ever going to be the person that you were ultimately designed to be by God. And that's where I am with it. That's what I believe wholeheartedly.
Was your grandfather a man of God then, would you say?
He was, but he never went to church. He went to church once in Korea, which was a mock-up chapel. And he went and prayed, but he prayed every day. And he told me that, your church can be anywhere. You don't need to go to a place of worship to worship God. And I believe that as well.
You mentioned you put a really good post on. I think it was about Anthony Holmes, but you put the power of the pen.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to look too far ahead to the future. Are you going to start potentially journaling about the future now? What's next? I know I keep reverting back to this question. I'm just more intrigued of what is the next step for you? You've been at the highest of the highs. How do you pivot? Where do you go next? What road do you go down? Can you even sit and think about that yet, or is it just too soon?
No. Time will tell, and it really will. We all have a purpose, don't we? We're spiritual creatures, and I think we have a purpose, I'm not still quite certain what my purpose is. I'm getting a rough idea. It's slowly being unveiled what it perhaps could be. But when that door opens, I'll know, because it'll feel right, and I've got to go with what feels right. Your instinct's there for a reason. We're sure we've all been in them situations where your gut tells you something. Well, listen to it. Never ignore it. I believe in all that stuff, and I don't care what anyone thinks about it. I wholeheartedly believe that. That's our anything. That's God. That's our ancestry telling us something, We've been protected and guided for a reason, so go with it. Go with what feels right. And when the door opens, I'll know.
To be open and receptive for that, are you just taking certain times in the day to get these downloads and this information? Is it, how does someone begin to sort of sit with themselves and try and get that information?
It's a difficult one, you've got to take things as they come. We don't know what's in the future, do we? We just don't know. No one can read the future. Nobody knows. I don't know. You don't know. We check things as they come. And all the prayer in the world and all the writing things down, there's no guarantees. You might not get everything you want. I say it all the time. God most likely won't give you what you ask for. You'll be given what you need. If you ask for strength and guidance, then chances are he's going to throw something at you that demands that you navigate through that situation, and it demands a situation where you need to be strong. You need to get through it. And that's where real strength comes from, experience and navigating through this experience we call life. You don't just wake up one morning and you're strong because you put it in your prayers. It doesn't work like that.
I feel like a massive part of that, when I talk about manifesting, some people say yeah, but why can't you just manifest £1 million in your bank? And yeah, fair enough, that's not going to happen. That's more of a wish or a dream. But
yeah, exactly.
If you believe enough in that manifestation, or if you believe enough in a religion or a prayer, it's just setting you on that right path to aiming for a goal. Let's say if I manifest to be a world champion kickboxer in 2 years' time, it won't happen if I just sit there and keep manifesting every day. But if it gives me a goal to work towards something, and that's how it makes that work.
You need the action, but more importantly, you need the coordinates of where you're going to go. I think most people are lacking any sort of worthy mission.
Mm-hmm. You need a direction. Yeah. You need a goal. And without a direction or a goal, you're just floating around. I seen something, I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger that said, I thought it was brilliant. He said, you take the best battleship or the best cruise liner in the world, or you take the best aeroplane in the world, without a destination, it's just going to end up floating around. Mm-hmm. It's not going to end up anywhere. Doesn't matter how powerful that vessel is.
Yeah.
If it doesn't know where it's going, it's just going to end up floating around. Yeah. This is why we need direction. This is why and it starts small. It starts by writing something down. That's where it starts for me. I write it down, and over time you come to believe. Over time things happen. You get setbacks, but you never stop believing. You don't just give up because you're having a bad day. You know what I mean? You don't just throw the idea of your dream and your goal out the window because things aren't really going your way. You know what I mean? You get through it. And that's where it is for me. And all this stuff's only come about since I've been clean. If I was to have this conversation 2 years ago, or you tried telling me anything what I'm telling you, I would have laughed in your face. Mm-hmm. I would have called you a hippie or whatever. It wouldn't have made any sense to me. I'd have thought you were the divvy. Because at the time, I was the only sane person on earth. You know what I mean? And I was one of the most lost individuals you'd ever come across.
Them thoughts cross my mind when I'm like journaling and stuff. If someone had said to me last year, I bet you're going to be like writing a journal down and writing down like stuff that you manifest, I'd be like, nah, it's not me. But then once you actually do it, it makes so much sense.
Of course it does.
A little bit off topic here. When we were sat in the sauna the other day and we had Alan Watts on and he had this idea of reincarnation. I'm very intrigued to know what you think happens when we die.
Well, I know where I'm going, because I believe I've been there. I'm really not really interested in what anyone thinks or doesn't think about that. My experience with DMT, multiple experiences with DMT, I believe took me there. Might have mentioned it before, I could feel my dad. I could feel him, I could smell the smell of him. Because he had an old prison shirt from one of his many trips to jail, and he stole it from prison and he kept it, and I ended up with it, and he had a certain smell. People just have their own smell. I could smell him. I could feel him. I knew he was there, and I knew he was waiting on us. And without uncertainty, I know that's where I'm going. And that's one thing that molecule done for me. It completely alleviated my fear of death. And when it's my time, you know, I know exactly where I'm going, and I won't fear it one bit. And that's why everything that we go through in this life, you know, is happening for a reason, because there's no problems.
What age were you? I'm surmising, did your dad pass away? How old were you?
When I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, so I never much knew him, you know. I've got one memory of him which might not even be an actual memory. You know, I know it happened, and I might just remember remembering it. And it wasn't a very nice one. But, you know, a very well-respected and psychotic man at times. But I know he's waiting for us. So is my granda, and so is all my friends that I've ever lost. I've lost so many good friends. Things that bother us to this day, you know, certain things that I think I could have had an influence over, or I could have certainly changed a few things. You know, there was one time, I'll talk about it, bothers me to this day, thinking about it on the way down. How weird's that? Remember when David Hay fought Valuev?
Mm-hmm.
That night, I was married at the time, we were in the mother and father-in-law's house, watching it. There's only meant to be 2 or 3 of us on the packet and a load of beers and all that. And lads kept knocking on the door, my pals and that. So the mother-in-law was like, go on, let 2 more in, go on, let 2 more in. Before you know it, the front room was full. She's like, there's no one else coming in. No, you know what I mean? The house getting, you know what it's like, lads together, the house is getting mental. She's like, no one else is coming in. And my friend, who I went to school with, good pal of mine, John Tickle, he chopped the door, and Steph was like, nah, there's no one else getting in. So the father-in-law said, look, John, no one else is getting in. And he asked for me. He said, well, can you get Danny for us? Can you get him for us, you know? And it was like mid-fight. I was like, John, I'll speak to you tomorrow. I could hear him through the kitchen door. I said, I'll speak to you tomorrow. And he said, Danny, there's an underlying issue here. Didn't know what that meant. I said, John, I'll speak to you tomorrow. He went home and hung himself that night, you know? And all these things, you know, all these people that have gone before us, you know, people that I love to bits, so many good friends. You know, it's...
How hard's that to take? I sit on that a little bit. I was 12, my dad hung himself. So I sit on that almost, was there anything I could have done, even though I was a child, you know, I mean, probably not. How does that sit there, that the potential that if you would have got up, could it have... Do you sit on that? You sit on that a lot? Is that something hard to deal with?
Yeah, it plays over in my mind a lot, you know. This was a long time ago, you know, but, you know, we never forget, do we? You know, and these things, they come back round for a reason. And ultimately they remind me how lucky I am, you know, to still be alive. Some of the near-death experiences I've had, some of the car crashes, some of the stabbings and shootings, and, you know, I'm lucky to be here. I'm very lucky to be here. And I thank God every day for the protection that I had my entire life without knowing, because there's not a doubt in my mind, you know, I've been protected by a power greater than myself since the day I was born. You know, I come out my mum an addict. My mum and dad were addicts. You know, I was addicted the day I was born. And, you know, something's got me here. It hasn't been chance. It hasn't been coincidence. Like everything that's ever happened in my life, it's not chance. Me knocking Anthony Holmes flat at the weekend didn't happen by accident. You know, it wasn't a mistake or a fluke or a lucky punch. Simple as that.
So is fate the word there or not?
Yeah, I've got faith. Of course I have. How could I not have? You know, with what I've been through, what I've got, who I am, and all the experiences in between. You know, I've got a wholehearted faith in a power greater than myself, and that comes in many forms. Power greater than ourselves is at work all the time. You know, I call it the universe, call it karma, call it God, many names for it, you know what I mean? But without uncertainty, there is a power greater than ourselves constantly at work, and it misses nothing. So think about that next time you're having a wank. You know what I mean? Someone's watching you, mate. Someone's laughing at you. Think about the next time you think being sneaky and thinking just robbing a bit of this or robbing a bit of that, or maybe, you know, deceiving somebody who you love. Have a think about that, mate, because you're getting watched, you know what I mean? And they'll pay you back for it tenfold. Don't you worry about that.
It was Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan's. It's a similar story to that. He was smoking a lot of cannabis at the time. And he went to Brazil, did an ayahuasca ceremony, and he took his wife. I'm not saying he was mistreating his wife, but I think his career and his business, he'd got lost in this, he'd got lost in marijuana, and he in his ceremonies in his trip, his heart got weighed in at the gates. Whatever you believe, if you believe that you're going to get sort of reviewed or whatever seems to happen, but he felt like you were getting weighed in, and if his heart weighed too heavy, then you can sort of surmise where that path leads, and that sort of changed him. And I think it's a strong way to think that if this has all been watched, and there is something next, then the way we live is very important.
Of course it is.
How important is it trying to action this for someone who's listening? The ability to change. So even if you've been in bad relationships or your life feels like it's got a little bit away from you, is there still the ability for redemption and rise? And that's key, innit?
Of course there is, mate. There's hope for everybody. I'm not quite sure how that sits with nonces, because that's evil, and they're the lowest people on earth. If you harm a child or if you molest a child, you see me coming, you better get the fuck out of my way because I will kill you, But outside of that, I think there's hope for everybody. It's as simple as that. What's a good time? What's triumph without struggles? Anybody can change, and it starts up here. You've got to want it. And, we reap what we sow. If you want to be a cunt with everybody and you want to be a dickhead all your life, that will come back and bite you in the arse. I've no two ways about that. I've known it, I've seen it, I've fucked a lot of people over. I've broke a lot of hearts and promises and jaws, and I've done so much bad things, robbing and taxing people. So many bad things, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing things that I knew was bad at the time, doing them anyway. You pay for all that.
When you're in that, how self-aware are you of I'm getting in deep here? Are you oblivious to that?
It's a funny one at the time. It's bad, but you don't feel bad about it, because you've got no heart. You're cold. You're a cold individual who doesn't care, and you're not bothered about stamping on people's dreams and heads and whatever it is. You've got a lack of concern. But, times change. Yeah, things change, man.
How does that sit with you when you actually sort of mature and realise that the stuff that you're doing in the past wasn't necessarily good? Does it still haunt you a little bit, or do you kind of forgive yourself for what you've done and make yourself a better person?
We have to keep going. It is what it is, but... See, I'm not my past. You're not your past. I'm me right now, and I'm pleased with who I am today. But I try and do the best I can today, and that's what counts. I'm not going to beat myself up about stuff that I've done for years. I've had that. I've been through all that regret and remorse and sorrow and all that stuff. I've lived that for years. I've had to let go of all that so I can move on myself. But I do the best I can, and I'll never fuck anybody over, I won't do it. I know where it leads, it's not good. I try and be the best version of myself that I can be, because I've been the worst. And on to that, what you were on about before, touching on that a little bit, how do people change? Well, people do change. People change every day, and everybody's got the opportunity to change. And the people that I'm around now, in my life, in recovery, and in, life in general, the people who I love and respect the most are the people who have been the worst people. They've been the worst type of people. They've been drug dealers, thieves, robbers, even murderers, and they're the people that I like to be around now. The people who are now really good people, potentially dangerous, trying their best to be good. They're the people I like to be around.
Mm-hmm. I've just got a couple of questions on top of that.
Yes, mate.
So obviously, since we did the first podcast, you've had nothing really other than good to say about Anthony Holmes. You've now fought him, you've beat him. Obviously, we've had Anthony on the podcast on Monday. He said what he said and his views on the stuff. Do you respect Anthony more now after everything, or do you respect him any less?
I respect him about the same. As far as a person goes, probably respect him as much as I did. Mm-hmm. Fighting wise, I probably respect him a bit more. And like I said, it's a bit of a bitter pill for Anthony to swallow, getting smashed like that in front of his home crowd. And I could see you lads were a bit upset, with him being your friend. Yeah. I understand that wholeheartedly. friends want what's best for other friends. That's the beauty of having good friends. You know, you've had emotional investment in it, and you wanted him to win, and that's fair enough. You know, but Anthony can come back. Anthony will be just fine. You know, I hope it has lit a fire under him, and you know, I promised him the rematch because I felt for him. You know, I said something in the changing rooms like "Don't hate me, mush" or something, and he told me to fuck off. You know, which is understandable from where his head was. I didn't think any worse of him for saying that.
Yeah.
But like I say, if he wants to badger the promotion for a rematch, and the promotion come to me with the rematch, I'll give it to him again. But I would probably advise not fighting me again. You know, it's not personal. I don't dislike him, but believe it or not, I actually want what's best for him. And fighting me again is not what's best for Anthony Holmes.
Have you exchanged any words with him personally, or are you just going off what's been online?
He sent me a message congratulating me on my victory and that, which was well received.
Yeah.
And I sent him a message back, 1 or 2 messages, just thanking him. And you know, I remember saying something what I probably haven't mentioned before is he's got probably one of the most soothing, calming voices I think I've ever heard.
Yes, and
you know, he could make money reading them audio kids books or something. You know, he's extremely calm voice. But look, I wish him well, and I hope he comes back. You know, and what will be for him.
Yeah, like we just said earlier, I think what you said in the Red Corners podcast yesterday, that it is a bit too soon to be speaking about what's gone on straight after a fight. You've got to let the dust settle a little bit.
Yeah.
I think his opinions, I don't know if they'll have changed or not. I can't speak on his behalf, but obviously, a little bit fired up after a loss. So
yeah, of course. Listen, I do sympathise with him, but you know, I stand by what I say. You know, I think, you know, if we did ever cross paths again, you know, I think I'd knock him out again. Yeah. You know, I don't think he's ever been in there with someone who hits quite as hard as me or can take, you know, punishment like I can. All that stuff I mentioned, pal, all that stuff I've been through in the past, all the pain and hurt I've caused and been through myself, taking punches is nothing to me.
Seeing as we're talking on your past a little bit as well, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want, 'cause I know you don't like mentioning his name, and I won't either.
Go on.
Did you see that someone had put a video out a couple of days ago, like a little 3-part video? I just saw it. Someone sent me it this morning. If you've not seen it, I'm not going to
Referring to me?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not.
Talk.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Go on.
It's the person who you don't like to name.
Right.
He's put a couple of videos, like a 6 or 7 minute 3-part videos on YouTube.
What, on his channel?
On somebody else's channel.
Right, God love him. Go on.
Just basically accusing you of targeting him from 2019 and saying that you've accused him of stuff and it were all your big plan to be successful on YouTube and stuff like that, and saying
God
that
bless him.
you fought it. The last time you fought was 4 stone heavy. He was out of shape, and now he's a fit guy and bigging himself up. Basically, I just wondered if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it, but I'll answer if that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, that person who I don't think much of lives in the same town as me. I know him probably better than anybody on YouTube knows him. He's a bully and a coward. You know, he is what he is. You know, and he's much worse than that. You know, and if he got any problems with me, he knows where I live. I live on Sewell Road in Curragh. You know, and if he wants to turn up at my door, I will slap the taste clean out of his mouth for him, and there's nothing he'll be able to do about it. How's that?
That's top notch. That.
Can I just ask one thing? This is, you know, you say "come by." I like that. Just give us that one. When you
Come by.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
Come by. It means move out the way.
Does it? Yeah.
What's happening with Darren G as well? Do you have some beef with Darren G?
Bits, mate. Darren G's Darren G. You know, he's a harmless little man who poses no threat to anybody. You know, another one that crosses the line quite often on the internet, but you know, probably couldn't knock a wank out.
Yeah, I followed his story for a little bit for a while, and then his most recent stuff seems a little bit like fighting someone who's got a bike seat on a street and he's just taking piss out of him.
Yeah, he's just you know, he is what he is, mate. He's a joke, you know, but there's no point getting into even any arguments with him because it'll never get any further than online, you know. So you just got to let these people be, you know. They're them, I'm me, and that's it.
I'm very curious, now that you've been sober for so long, how did you celebrate your win?
A lot of cake, you know. My kids will probably watch this, so I don't want to say what me and Alice were up to for the majority of the night. And a lot of vapes, you know what I mean? A lot of vapes.
Can we do cigars? I don't know if that were part of it.
Not for me, you know. I'd probably end up on the gear, mate, if I smoked anything more than a vape, you know. I've got to be careful. I have to be careful, you know. I've said before I'm an addict, and anything that makes me feel good. I want more of, you know, which is something I've got to think about, letting this fighting go. You know, it's going to be difficult to mimic that feeling, which I love, you know, but it's going to have to be replaced with something. You know, I can't live a bland existence. You know, I need something that's going to motivate me and something that's going to fire me up, but time will tell what that will
find it. We'll find it.
I just want to thank you for coming straight away like this and visiting, but secondly for opening up. Like it made me,
man.
when you bring your granddad up, then it brings a lot of thoughts back in my head,
Yeah.
and sort of like sit on some of those things for the next couple of days and digest that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Not a problem, mate.
Get some well-needed rest, mate. And
Yeah,
although
bro.
you don't know what you're going to be doing yet, I hope that you do return to the ring, and we'll be definitely paying to watch it, mate.
Thank
You're the
you
man,
very
Dana.
much.
You're the man.
Thank you for coming along, mate.
Appreciate that, lads.
Cheers, pal.
Thank you.